everyone, it's me. I'm back. My name's Michelle, also known as Shelly Shucker, and I'm a local artist and art educator here in Albuquerque and the area. And I just want to thank Catharsis Media, APS, and Any Given Child for just allowing me to do my passion, which is teaching art and being involved in the art world, and also to just get art and art lessons and the dancing lessons and all the things that people have been doing to bring like things for you guys to do in your home with your family or with yourself during this time. So thanks again. And so today I want to show you this person's art. Her name is Kara Walker, and she currently has a really large scale piece at the Albuquerque Museum. And this is part of a show called 30 Americans, and this is a show that's completely African American artists who have, they're all contemporary artists. I'm trying to think if that's true. All still living, and actually that's not true. John Basquiat is in that show too, Jean-Michel, but yeah, anyways, there's just really contemporary art, and it's just really important because sometimes or a lot of times, the voices and the imagery of people that have been left out of like history books and popular culture. And so it's really awesome that now finally there's a lot more platforms and a lot more interest and a lot more taking care to show the work of all people. So anyways, this person's name is Kara Walker, and she does silhouettes. So she uses black and white imagery, and it's oftentimes very large. And so we're going to look at some of her slides here just in a minute, but I want to also talk about some materials that you'll need. There's not too many today, and so you're going to need black and white paper if you have it, a few pieces of each, and some scrap paper if you ever want to sketch stuff out. It's always nice. I always try to use like reused paper as much as I can. If you don't have black paper, you could use just a different color. So it's just kind of about using two different colors to create that contrast and the positive and negative shapes. So you'll need two different colors of paper and something to cut with. So scissors, if you do have an X-Acto knife or a blade, that is going to help define some details. So get those. And let's see, glue, because we're going to glue it down. So glue stick. A pencil is going to be really helpful. And then if you do have an X-Acto blade, we're going to protect the surface with a piece of cardboard. So make sure you get something to protect the table if you're going to be cutting with a blade. I think that's everything for the materials. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the art concepts that we're going to be looking at. And as far as the grade level goes, I personally like to create lessons that could be for all ages. This one, maybe because some of the content might be easier or more accessible for 6th to 8th graders, but I think it's important to talk to everybody about issues with race and gender, identity, and like stereotypes. So we won't go too heavy into that, but that's something that will be maybe more for the older group, and then the X-Acto blade, of course. So you can use scissors, of course. I give children scissors, small children, but that's just me. So just letting you know that grade level. And so some of the art concepts here that we're going to be talking about and looking at are the contour line. So the contour line is the outline of a person, of an object, and that's going to be really important. That's really important in her work because things are silhouetted. And so that's the contour line. We're going to be looking at how do you create movement. A lot of her imagery is has a lot of movement in it. There's something happening, and it's so awesome how she does that because it's just a black flat shape, but creating movement with our lines. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at ideas of the positive and negative shape. So where I'm standing, this is the positive. What's all around me is called the negative shape. So when we're cutting out our shapes, we're thinking about looking closely, and this helps with drawing, painting, composing. Even dancers will look at the way that their body is. So looking at what's happening in the positive shape and then how to define what's happening in the negative shape. So that's something we'll look at. We're also going to talk a little bit about shape and scale. So Kara Walker will make really large figures, and then maybe something really a smaller figure. And so that, again, just black shapes, but that's going to tell us something's farther away and something's closer, for example, or just the power of creating a piece of art that is on a whole wall. We're going to be working on paper, sheets of paper, but hey, if you can just tape up things on your wall for fun, if your family, your parents, adults will go for that, that could be really cool to just try putting a composition on a wall. So that's kind of has to do with scale. Let's see, and then content. So that's kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier. Content is what is your art about? Sometimes we just make art to like de-stress, and there's not necessarily always a lot of thought behind what is the concept. For her work, of course, that's very important. And it's interesting because when you look at her work, or when I look at her work, it looks very beautiful and lyrical, but when we get up close and look, it's actually really disturbing imagery of slavery and things that happened in the history of the African American lives. And so that content is very important. And when we take time to make art, and when artists make these choices, especially when you get to this level, like having museum shows all over the world, it's so cool to be able to use your art to express what your passion is or speak for a whole group of people. And for us, for our content, maybe it's going to be simple things like a tree or your cat. And that's really up to you. Maybe you can do a silhouette of your face. There's all different options. But anyways, the content is, what is the art about? What's the concept? So we're going to go ahead and just look at some slides of her work just to give you an idea here, and take time to Google and find out. Maybe you can go to see the show at the museum if it reopens, or go online and look at some of the other pieces of art that are in that show. So this first image is, you can see it's a smaller figure and then holding a baby. And I'm not sure exactly, but it's like a child that's holding a child. So maybe this idea of like the child becoming a mother and having to take care of something at a young age. So, but you can just see again how I was talking about that movement. You can see like how the angle of the shoulder and the neck is kind of exaggerated, and that's to create interest. You know, if it was just like a blob, you wouldn't be able to tell what it is. But with this silhouetted art project, you really kind of exaggerate some of the lines to give the figure some movement and some interest. Okay, so the next image that we're going to look at is this man and woman, and you can see they have some kind of relationship with each other. And you can see the quality of the line is suggesting this movement. And there's a little detail of the fence on the side. So little details of things can set the landscape or where something is happening. Okay, and then we'll look at this next one, which is a plant. It's a little bit different. Oftentimes she's doing figures, and here this is a plant. And I just love how it's so organic, and it's almost symmetrical. So that's a design aspect. That's something to think about when we're designing how we're using the space, that positive and negative space. And then we have this next image, which is the white on the black. So it's a flip. And oftentimes we're looking at her work, which is the black on the white. This one is the reverse. And so this is something that you can play with too if you have the two different colors of paper, is just using those on top of each other, or one in the background, one in the foreground. Something to look at here. And then the last one that we're going to look at by her is this big mural going across the wall and turning the corner even. And so that's just something that I think, again, I mentioned is really inspiring to think about as an artist, is you can jump off of the page. You don't always have to think of yourself working on a piece of paper or a canvas. You can move your ideas to a very large scale and just make it like very interactive, immersive. And so then these last two slides that I want to show are examples of some work that some younger artists made, some young children made. And so this first one you can see, it's just a tree, and it's inspired by her work. These are projects that were inspired by her work. And again, they didn't address the content in the same way that she did, but still really interesting how there's the use of the landscape and this the linear, and then some aspects of nature. And this very last slide, again, is another child's piece of art based off of her work. And yeah, again, this person is mixing or creating a scene where some humans, there's multiple figures, which is something to think about, multiple figures set in a natural setting. And you can tell all of this just by using black and white cutouts. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting and inspiring to you. We're going to get ready to just go make some art. Okay, hey, so let's get into this. So I'm just gonna go over a couple things. If you have your cardboard, you can put that. I was using this yesterday to make the example, so I got some beautiful X-Acto knife lines in there. So we got our cardboard, a couple of different colors of paper, glue stick, scissors, pencil, and then I'm going to show you too at some point I made this cute little envelope, because whenever I cut out a shape, then like I was talking about the positive negative shapes, those little negative shapes are cute and we can hang on to them in a little envelope. But first I want to show you a couple examples of the ones that I made. And so here's this one, hooray, and a couple things about this. First of all, I was kind of inspired by Keith Haring, one of my favorite street artists from the 80s. He made these really simple figures. So this is different than Kara's style, and he didn't, as far as I know, didn't do very many cutouts. But I was inspired by the way he made his figures. Really simple. So the figures like we saw with Kara's are really elaborate. This is really simple. And yeah, and I just drew them first with the pencil and then cut them out. And then another thing I wanted to point out is this little sign that said hooray. So when you write letters or you cut them out, when I cut out the O or the R or the A, the whole letter comes out. And so it would just be a blank O without this black part in the middle. So that's why I save all my little cuts in my envelope, and then I glue that black back into the O. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's one thing to think about when you're writing, which I think is a fun thing to do. And then these little stars were left over from this, I call her the Hermit, this woman, and it was left over from her dress. And so I wanted to show you some things I learned when I was working on her, and that is, maybe I'll hold this up so you can maybe see this better. It makes really cool shadows. Is that there's pencil lines in here, and that doesn't bother me. But when I did cut out her arm, I didn't like how much I had cut out, and then I cut out her hood, and I thought that it looked kind of strange and not how I wanted it to. And so I just used, I'm not sure if you can see this, but you could maybe see the glue, but I just used another piece of paper to kind of like fill back in my mistake. So that's something you can do too, because like when we cut something, it's like, oh shoot, we can't change it, but actually you can, especially with a little bit of glue stick. So those were just some things that I learned along the way. And then one thing too I want to talk about is, and I'll show you the last one to kind of talk about that, and it's about designing your composition. And so this one I didn't glue down yet, but this is something to think about too as I made my city shape, but I wanted to have like an organic kind of rounded shape into it. So maybe this is water, maybe this is a bridge, maybe this is some bushes. But anyways, so it's one big shape and then cutting out these little shapes inside of it to give it more definition, more detail. But this is what I wanted to show you, is that before you glue it down, you can move it around and see, is this like down here at the bottom of the page? Is it up here? And then also you can flip it and decide before you glue it down. So don't feel like you have to, and actually I advise to maybe move things around a bit before you glue them down. And then also one thing I mentioned too is like putting it on the wall with a little piece of tape without the paper. Maybe try that out. Check with your family first. And so let's get started. I'm going to cut, first I'm going to make my drawing, and I just have this idea, and I'm going to do mine right now where I'm going to switch. All the ones that I made are black on white, so I'm going to go for white on black for this like live demo. So I'll draw with my pencil first. So I'm going to do a skate. So I'm going to draw it out first on the white piece of paper. And once you draw out your general shape, it's cool because you can add to it. Like maybe I want to add like a little flag thing just for fun. And then these wheels. and I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. So for people who just only have scissors, you know, I would advise keeping the shape kind of simple. So I'm going to cut this out with scissors, and then I'll go into it with an X-Acto knife, just so you can see a little bit how I do that. And oftentimes when I'm cutting and I have this big tail, I just kind of like snip it off so it's easier to manage what I'm doing. And then snip that off, so then I'm just holding like the smallest piece of paper that I can. That can relieve some frustration while you're cutting. And okay, so then we have this little skate, super cute. And maybe I would flip it over because then I don't see the that pencil line, but I'll see. So then I'm going to go back and now do the cutting on my little cardboard. And so you can draw if that's helpful for you. So I think I'm just going to actually cut out a few laces and like a little squiggle in here. So then I get my blade, and as you can see, I use something to protect the blade and to protect anybody who might try and pick it up at some point. And I have to say, of course, it makes a huge difference when you have a very sharp blade. The sharp blade is going to just make the lines a lot sharper. Oftentimes when the blade, same thing when you're in the kitchen, I mean, sharpening knives is a really important thing, and maybe not enough people know that, but keeping a sharp knife will also help you from getting hurt because you're like pressing so hard to cut the line and you don't realize it's because your blade is dull. And so this is a fairly sharp blade. So I got those little guys cut out, and then I'm gonna do this little swoosh thing. And just moving my hand around. And if it's not exactly how I drew it, personally, I don't care at this point. I'm still practicing my my Kara Walker style, but I really am enjoying the black and white and cutting into the positive shape. So here's our little swoosh. And so yeah, when I'm making something, whatever your shape is, maybe it has more of a cultural context. I mean, the skate does have a cultural context. But whatever you're doing, just think about adding some details for interest and trying to use that positive and negative. So there's my skate, and then I'll just glue it down and I decide where do I want it. And I will keep working on this. I'm gonna let you guys just go, you know, keep working on your own, but I wanted to give you just a quick example. Hopefully you have lots of ideas and inspiration from some of the things that we looked at and just things that you're interested in. So then I have my glue stick, and when I'm gluing, it's actually, you know, better to do it on like a piece of scrap paper and get to the edges. So just make sure that you're really hitting the edges, because otherwise it kind of curls up. And so here, and this is purple, and it dries clear, and it's really helpful for me because I can see where I've glued, especially if I'm doing a bigger piece. And it will dry clear. So then I'm going to put it on my page and just smooth it down. Got a little wrinkle, so I'll just peel it up. That's why the glue stick is awesome. Some people think it's just an elementary art school, which is perfect, but I mean, it's really useful for more complex art too. Okay, so I got my little skate, and like I said, maybe I would put some swooshes in the background and add a couple more details, but I wanna just let you get into your art making. I did wanna show you just quickly how to make this little envelope. just because I like it so much. As you can see in a lot of my other pieces, there were a lot of small pieces. So basically, I just fold it, move this out of the way. I'll fold it so there's only about a quarter or less of the page at the top. So that's the basic envelope shape. And this comes in super handy for so many things. You can, and then I'll fold it in so we have this inner little lip. I mean, you can send letters to people. I totally encourage us making more handmade things and sending it in the mail. So then I do that, but I actually cut this little flap right here, this little insert right here, so that I can tuck that in. And then I'll just glue it here. And there's lots of different ways to do this, but this is just one idea. So then I just fold that, and then I have this cute little envelope to keep all the little tidbits in. So I just wanted to share that fun little thing with you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna add another skate here in the back so we can explore this idea of like having something closer and then something farther away just on this flat surface. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw again another skate. And maybe this is a little big. This is why I draw it off first. And then again, I'll use my scissors to cut it out. And this time I'm just gonna cut right around so I don't have that big tail of paper following me everywhere I go. And okay, and I did decide to, I drew it, same as when I did this one. I drew them on one side. Oops, and I had drawn my thing on the other side, so I'm just going to erase this off a little bit. I thought that I was going to be able to lay it down, but that's okay, and that's why I have my eraser, and I'm just having a good time. Just not being too hard on myself, and that's one thing I always like to remind art students, that it's just like, don't, try not to get too stressed out. It's just, art is important, but we can always remake it, and that's like one of the cool things about art. So then you can see this guy's smaller, and here I'm playing around with, maybe I'm going to crop it off the page and I would cut it off. So that's why I haven't quite glued it down yet. And then I do want to take out a little part of it with my X-Acto knife to also give it that, that pattern. Our eye is always looking for something repeating. And so if we do something here, something here, something here cut out, then that helps the eye even move more around our composition. So my cardboard. And this time I'm just going to freehand it. Like I drew my little swoop that time. I'm going to freehand it here. And just kind of cut in here. Going over. And I was just thinking, I know not everybody has an X-Acto knife, but I'll have to say, as a person who's been living my life as an artist for a long time, it's so helpful to have an X-Acto knife. So hey, if you're looking for a request for a gift this end of the year season, maybe ask for an X-Acto knife set. They come in really cool sets with all different kinds of blades and everything. So here's this little guy right here. And then I also want to create a little bit more. I'm going to put these, replicate the laces. But I also am thinking about maybe a couple movement lines. And that's actually something that Keith Haring did a lot in his work, is that whenever something was moving, it had like those cartoon lines around it, which is a really great technique. Kara has her own very sophisticated way of creating movement and kind of like that dynamic tension with the way that the figures were. So just think about how in your composition. Are you creating movement? Is yours more of a static piece? And then again, I think I'm going to shape up this edge right here a little bit. So it's cool, we're just always adjusting and changing, giving a little bit more character. Yeah, and then see, I'm going to snip this off. Okay, and see, even just that line right there, it gives it more, a little bit more of a movement. So I like that. So there's that, and then I am going to use, let's see if I can use any of my clippings here that I would have maybe put in my envelope, and then maybe I'll use these to create that movement, that little extra detail. And as you can see, I'm just placing them. I am not gluing them down like I did with this big guy, but these little pieces, I'm kind of just seeing where I want them. Oops. So yeah, I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue these down. This one looks a little ragged. So maybe I'll just, and you can, here's where a great place for scissors too. I'm just going to create a couple more shapes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. And then we'll glue it down. And I'm constantly organizing and clearing out my workspace, and I talk to my students about that a lot. Some people are naturally really organized. I am not, and so I always have to remind myself, like, move stuff out of the way. Otherwise, before I know it, there's like this giant pile of stuff in front of me, and I'm like, ah, I can't see my art. Okay, so there. Okay, I like that long one. Oh, and I gotta glue this guy down. Okay. And then I just really want to do this, and this is kind of like, it's not cheating, but it's a little bit kind of what I did here by putting this thing in the back. I really want to have something on the skate. So actually, I was thinking of a star, so I'm just going to borrow this. And so then I'm putting the black on the top, so it looks like maybe I would have cut it out, but I didn't, but that's okay, and it's just kind of creating a little bit of a different effect. So this is something, don't feel like when you're making art at any time you have to be stuck to something. I mean, sometimes it's nice to do a challenge, be like, I'm only going to try using this one material, which is what we're doing. We're just using paper and things to cut it out and glue. But it's fun to be able to like pull from different things and pop them in there. So I just encourage you to continue having fun making your art. And if there's a little mistake that happens or a nudge that you have that you want to try something out, I say go for it. And voila. So thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you. Okay, you guys, that was so awesome. I hope you made some really cool art. I'm really satisfied with the art that I made, and I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm really inspired by her work and the simplicity and complexity of what we just did. So we learned some new art concepts. We looked at this artist, Kara Walker, who is just phenomenal, I think. And you made a couple pieces of art that hopefully you'll continue to make and share and just be inspired. So I hope you'll have a beautiful day, a beautiful rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.